The coffee shop hummed with Tuesday morning efficiency. Marcus sat in the corner booth, laptop open, watching the parade of important people rush past his table. Not one glance. Not one acknowledgement. He might as well have been furniture. 28 years old and invisible. His phone buzzed. Another rejection email. This one didn't even bother with pleasantries, just a form letter that felt like it had been generated by a bot that couldn't be bothered to learn his name. He'd been passed over for the promotion again. Third time this year. The position went to Jennifer, who'd started 6 months after him but had somehow convinced everyone she was indispensable. The weight of it settled in his chest like cold concrete. Marcus had always been the kid who raised his hand and got ignored. The one whose ideas got credited to someone else 5 minutes later. In college, he'd written half of David's thesis as David, who graduated summa cum laude while Marcus scraped by with honors that no one remembered. At his first job, he'd created the system that saved the company $50,000 annually. His supervisor got the bonus. Now here he was, still waiting for someone to notice he existed. The barista called out names. Sarah. Michael. Jennifer. Each name landed like a small punch. Jennifer. Even the universe was mocking him now. He closed the laptop. Enough. Walking home, Marcus passed the gym where he'd bought a membership 2 years ago and used exactly 11 times. The mirror in the lobby showed him exactly what the world saw: soft shoulders, cheap clothes that hung wrong, eyes that apologized for taking up space. He looked like a man who'd already surrendered. The apartment building elevator wheezed upward. Mrs. Chun from 4B got on at the 3rd floor. They'd been neighbors for 2 years. She looked through him like he was made of air. Inside his studio apartment, Marcus sat on the edge of his bed and stared at the wall. No pictures. No awards. No evidence that anyone had ever thought he mattered enough to commemorate. His phone rang. Mom. How's work, honey? Fine. The lie came automatically. That's nice. Listen, your cousin Bradley just made partner at his firm. Isn't that wonderful? He's only 30. Bradley. Who'd cheated his way through organic chemistry using Marcus's notes. Wonderful, Marcus said. You should call him. Maybe he could give you some career advice. After she hung up, Marcus sat in the silence of his forgotten life. Every choice he'd made had led here. Every time he'd stayed quiet when he should have spoken up. Every time he'd smiled and nodded when someone took credit for his work. Every time he'd chosen comfort over conflict. He'd built himself a perfect little prison of niceness. The weak self stared back at him from the black phone screen. Polite. Accommodating. Forgettable. That night, Marcus did something he hadn't done in years. He took inventory. Not of his failures, he knew those by heart, but of his patterns. The unconscious habits that had made him disappear. He wrote them down. I say sorry 17 times a day for things that aren't my fault. I end statements with question marks, like I'm asking permission to have opinions. I wear clothes that help me blend in. I arrive early and leave late but never speak up in meetings. I do extra work hoping someone will notice, then act surprised when they don't. I treat my own ideas like suggestions. I laugh at jokes that aren't funny to avoid conflict. I've been playing not to lose instead of playing to win. The list filled 2 pages. Each line felt like a small death. But something strange happened as he wrote. Instead of the usual shame, he felt something else. Clarity. For the first time, he could see the architecture of his own invisibility. And, if he'd built it, he could tear it down. The weak self had to die. Not gradually. Not gently. Completely. Marcus walked to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. The man staring back had been sleepwalking for 28 years. Agreeable. Accommodating. Afraid. You're done, he said to his reflection. The words hung in the air like a declaration of war. That night, he didn't sleep. Instead, he planned. Not his next career move or his next networking event. He planned his resurrection. The systematic destruction of everything that had made him forgettable. Because the world doesn't ignore dangerous men. And, tomorrow, Marcus was going to become dangerous. Part 2, the calculated demolition. The first casualty was the wardrobe. Marcus stood in his bedroom at 5:47 a.m., holding a sweater that screamed, "I'm sorry for existing." Gray. Shapeless. Safe. He'd bought it because it wouldn't offend anyone. Into the donation bag. The khakis that made him look like middle management at a company that sold insurance to other insurance companies. Gone. The shoes that prioritized comfort over presence. Gone. The ties that whispered instead of declared. Gone. By 7 a.m., he'd eliminated 60% of his clothes. What remained fit like it had been waiting for him to find his spine. The black suit he'd bought for his grandfather's funeral but never worn anywhere else. The dark jeans that actually fit his frame. The white shirts that made his jaw look decisive. The leather jacket he'd bought on impulse and hidden in the back of his closet like contraband. He dressed like he meant it. At the coffee shop, the same corner booth, everything changed. The barista looked up when he ordered. Actually looked. The woman at the next table glanced over twice. Not because he was handsome, though the clothes helped. Because he carried himself like someone who'd made a choice. The email from Jennifer was waiting in his inbox. The new team lead wanted to meet with all department members to discuss synergies. 6 months ago, Marcus would have prepared talking points and worried about saying the right thing. Today, he deleted the email. If Jennifer wanted to talk to him, she could walk to his desk. The office operated on an ecosystem of invisible hierarchies. Who got invited to which meetings? Who grabbed coffee with whom? Who got interrupted and who didn't? Marcus had spent 3 years accepting his place in that ecosystem. Bottom feeder. Grateful for scraps. Not anymore. At 10:15, Jennifer appeared at his cubicle. Perfectly styled hair. Confidence that came from never being ignored. "Did you get my email about the team meeting?" "I did." Marcus didn't look up from his screen. "Great. So we're thinking 2 p.m. in conference room B." "I'm not available at 2 p.m. Jennifer blinked. In the 3 years she'd known Marcus, he'd never been unavailable. He was the guy who'd cancel dinner plans to update a spreadsheet. "Oh. Well, when would work better for you?" "Friday. 11 a.m. Conference room A." "I don't think conference room A is available, then we'll meet in my office." Marcus didn't have an office. His desk was in the shared workspace with 7 other people. But he said it like he'd always had one. Like it was obvious. Jennifer stood there for a moment, probably wondering when Marcus had developed opinions about conference rooms. "I'll check on that." After she left, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Not satisfaction, something deeper. The sensation of occupying space instead of apologizing for it. But this was just practice. The real target was James Morrison, the department head who'd passed Marcus over for the promotion 3 times. Morrison collected weak people. Surrounded himself with subordinates who made him feel important by never challenging anything he said. Marcus had been his perfect pet for 3 years. At 3:30, Morrison called a department meeting. 16 people crammed into a room built for 12. Morrison stood at the head of the table like he was addressing Parliament. "I want to discuss the Henderson project timeline." Henderson was the client Marcus had been managing for 8 months. The project Morrison knew nothing about because he delegated it completely and never asked follow-up questions. "We're looking at a 6-week turnaround," Morrison announced. Marcus didn't raise his hand. Didn't wait for permission. Henderson can't accommodate 6 weeks. The room went quiet. Morrison's eyebrows climbed toward his receding hairline. "I'm sorry?" Henderson Industries has a board review on March 15th. They need deliverables by March 1st. That's 4 weeks. Non-negotiable. Morrison's face did something complicated. In 3 years, Marcus had never contradicted him in public. Had never contradicted him in private, for that matter. Well, we'll need to adjust scope then, we don't. Marcus pulled out his phone, scrolled to his notes. I've mapped the critical path. 4 weeks is achievable if we eliminate the redundant approval layers you added to the workflow. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Morrison had added those approval layers because he liked having control. Everyone knew it. No one had ever said it. Marcus, I think you're misunderstanding the complexity. I understand the complexity. I've been managing this project since October. You've been to 1 meeting. Someone coughed. Jennifer stared at her laptop screen like it might save her. Morrison's voice got tight. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. Why? Everyone here is working on Henderson. They should know the actual timeline. And, there it was. The moment Marcus stopped being Morrison's pet and became his problem. After the meeting, Marcus didn't wait for the inevitable confrontation. He walked straight to Morrison's office. You wanted to discuss Henderson privately. Morrison closed his door. Sat behind his desk like it was a fortress. Marcus, I don't know what's gotten into you lately, but that kind of insubordination is unacceptable. Insubordination? Marcus sat down without being invited. I corrected inaccurate information about a project I'm managing. That's my job. Your job is to support team decisions, my job is to deliver results for Henderson Industries. Which I've been doing for 8 months while you've been taking credit. Morrison's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. I think you're confused about your role here. My role? Marcus leaned forward. James, I've generated more revenue than anyone else in this department for 2 years running. I've covered for your mistakes. I've made you look competent at client meetings. And, you've repaid that by promoting people who started after me. Marcus, I'm not finished. The words came out calm. Deadly calm. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to recommend me for the senior analyst position that's opening next month. You're going to give me direct client autonomy. And, you're going to stop taking credit for work you didn't do. Morrison laughed. Actually laughed. Or what? Marcus stood up. Walked to the door. Turned back. Or Henderson Industries learns that their project manager for the past 8 months has been a mid-level coordinator while their department head was billing senior-level hours for work he never did. The color drained from Morrison's face. You wouldn't. Try me. Marcus walked out. Left the door open. The weak self would have apologized. Would have backtracked. Would have found a way to make Morrison feel better about being exposed. The weak self was dead. What lives now was something Morrison had never dealt with before. Something that couldn't be managed or manipulated or ignored. Something dangerous. By 5 p.m., the entire office knew something had shifted. Marcus had been the department's most reliable pushover for 3 years. Now he was walking around like he owned the place. Because in a way, he did. The Henderson project was worth $1.2 million to the company. Marcus had delivered it flawlessly while Morrison golfed with clients and took long lunches. Morrison's reputation depended on Marcus staying quiet and manageable. But Marcus wasn't manageable anymore. And Morrison was about to learn what happened when you took weak men for granted. They don't stay weak forever. Part 3, the architecture of dominance. The transformation wasn't immediate, and it wasn't clean. 2 weeks after the confrontation with Morrison, Marcus sat in conference room A, the same room Morrison had claimed wasn't available. The Henderson presentation played on the wall screen. 16 slides of flawless execution. Revenue projections that made the executives smile. Timeline delivery that made competitors jealous. Henderson Industries had just renewed their contract. 18 months. $2.8 million. Marcus had run the entire presentation. Morrison sat in the corner like a decorative plant. Afterward, Sarah Chen, the VP of Business Development, cornered Marcus in the hallway. Impressive work on Henderson. Thank you. I wasn't talking about the presentation. Sarah had the kind of smile that preceded job offers. I was talking about how you handled Morrison. Took you 3 years, but you finally found your teeth. I had them the whole time. I just chose not to use them. Why? Marcus considered the question. 6 months ago, he would have given her some soft answer about team dynamics and collaborative approaches. Today, he told her the truth. Because I thought being agreeable would make people like me. I confused being liked with being respected. Sarah nodded. Most people never learn the difference. The ones who do become very dangerous. She wasn't wrong. The Henderson contract wasn't just a financial win. It was proof of concept. Evidence that Marcus could deliver results without Morrison's interference. Without anyone's interference. Word traveled fast in their industry. By Thursday, Marcus had 3 LinkedIn messages from headhunters. By Friday, he had a lunch meeting with Davidson Partners, the consulting firm that Henderson Industries used for their strategic planning. We've been watching the Henderson project, said Catherine Davidson, the firm's founder. Your work is exactly what we're looking for. The offer was substantial. 40% salary increase. Senior analyst position from day one. Direct client relationships. No middle management buffer. But, more importantly, recognition. The kind of role where invisibility wasn't possible. There's one condition, Catherine said over dessert. You'd be taking over the Meridian Industries account. They're particular about who they work with. Marcus knew Meridian. The tech company that had fired their last 3 consulting teams for failing to deliver. The client that made grown consultants update their resumes. Particular how? They don't tolerate incompetence. They don't tolerate excuses. They don't tolerate people who need their hands held. Catherine was testing him. Seeing if he developed the confidence to match his reputation. When do I start? The weak self would have asked for time to think about it. Would have worried about the risks. Would have chosen the safe path. But the weak self was dead. Had been dead for 3 weeks now. What remained was something that didn't flinch from challenges. Something that ate challenges for breakfast. Marcus gave Morrison 2 weeks' notice on Monday morning. Didn't apologize. Didn't explain. Didn't offer to help train his replacement. You're making a mistake, Morrison said. Davidson Partners has a reputation for burning through people. Good. I'm tired of working with people who don't burn bright enough to get noticed. The resignation letter was 1 paragraph. Professional. Final. No gratitude for opportunities that had never materialized. During his last 2 weeks, something interesting happened. People started seeking Marcus out for advice. Asking his opinion on projects he'd never worked on. Including him in conversations that had nothing to do with his responsibilities. It wasn't because he'd become friendlier. He'd become less friendly, if anything. More direct. Less accommodating. But he'd also become someone whose opinion mattered. Power is like gravity. People are drawn to it even when they can't explain why. Jennifer stopped by his desk on his second-to-last day. I heard about Davidson Partners. Congratulations. Thank you. Can I ask you something? She looked around, making sure Morrison wasn't within earshot. How did you know? About the Henderson timeline. About Morrison's billing hours. How long have you been paying attention to that stuff? Marcus leaned back in his chair. For 3 years, Jennifer had treated him like office furniture. Friendly enough, but never curious. Never interested in his opinions on anything important. Now she was asking for his secrets. I've always been paying attention, Jennifer. I just stopped pretending I wasn't. But, you never said anything. You never pushed back. Because I thought it was more important to be liked than to be right. And, now? Marcus smiled. Not the apologetic smile he'd worn for 28 years. Something sharper. Now I know that being right makes you impossible to ignore. And, being impossible to ignore is worth more than being liked. Jennifer nodded slowly. She was learning something about power dynamics she'd never had to think about before. When you're visible from the beginning, you don't have to strategize about getting noticed. But, when you're invisible, you have to engineer your own emergence. The Meridian Industries account was everything Catherine had warned him about and more. Marcus's first meeting was with Dr. Elena Vasquez, Meridian's chief technology officer. The woman who'd made the last 3 consulting teams cry. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. Your predecessor promised us a complete system integration in 12 weeks. Week 16, we had nothing but excuses and budget overruns. What makes you different? The old Marcus would have given her reassurances about communication and collaboration. Would have promised to do better without specifying how. The new Marcus pulled out his tablet and showed her a project timeline. Because I don't make promises I can't keep. And, I don't keep consultants on projects who can't deliver. Dr. Vasquez raised an eyebrow. Meaning? Meaning I've already identified the bottlenecks in your current system architecture. I've mapped the integration points that your previous team missed. And, I've built buffer time into the timeline for the problems they didn't anticipate. Marcus slid the tablet across the table. 8 weeks. Fully integrated. Fully tested. With documentation that won't require me to explain it to your team. 8 weeks? Dr. Vasquez scrolled through the timeline. The last team said 12 was aggressive. The last team was padding the timeline because they weren't confident they could deliver. I don't pad timelines. I deliver early. It wasn't bravado. Marcus had spent 60 hours mapping Meridian's system requirements. Had identified every integration point, every potential failure mode, every dependency that could create delays. He'd done the work that his predecessors had promised to do. Dr. Vasquez studied the timeline for 5 full minutes. Marcus didn't fill the silence with nervous chatter. Didn't apologize for being confident. You realize, she said finally, that if you miss this timeline by even a week, Meridian will terminate the contract and demand a full refund. I realize that. Do you realize that if I deliver on schedule, Meridian will have the most advanced integration system in your industry? And, if you deliver early? Marcus smiled. Then, Meridian will have a significant competitive advantage over companies that are still using legacy systems. Dr. Vasquez closed the tablet. Extended her hand. 8 weeks, Mr. Thompson. Impress me. Marcus delivered in 7 weeks and 3 days. Not because he'd gotten lucky. Not because the project had been easier than expected. Because he'd mapped every variable, anticipated every complication, and built solutions for problems that hadn't happened yet. The system integration worked flawlessly. The documentation was so comprehensive that Meridian's IT team could have rebuilt the entire system from scratch. But, more importantly, Marcus had proven something to himself. He wasn't just capable of doing excellent work. He was capable of doing work that made him indispensable. Dr. Vasquez called him into her office the day after final delivery. In 15 years of working with consultants, I've never seen project management like this. Thank you. I wasn't finished. She opened a folder on her desk. Meridian is expanding our technology partnerships. We're looking for someone to lead strategic consulting across multiple verticals. Someone who can deliver results like this consistently. The offer was extraordinary. 6-figure salary. Equity options. Direct reporting to the C-suite. But, It was also something else. Proof. Proof that the weak self had been wrong about everything. Wrong about playing small. Wrong about avoiding conflict. Wrong about thinking that competence without confidence was enough. Wrong about the entire strategy that had made Marcus invisible for 28 years. 6 months later, Marcus sat in a restaurant that required reservations booked 3 weeks in advance. Across from him sat Bradley, his cousin who'd made partner using Marcus's organic chemistry notes. "So tell me about this consulting thing," Bradley said. "Mom mentioned you're doing well." Doing well was an understatement. Marcus now ran strategic consulting for 4 Fortune 500 companies. His clients didn't just respect his opinions, they sought them out. Paid premium rates for them. Restructured their operations based on them. "It's been an interesting transition," Marcus said. Transition from what? Marcus considered how to answer. How do you explain to someone that you used to be a completely different person? That you'd spent 3 decades practicing invisibility before deciding to learn how to be seen? Transition from being overlooked to being unignorable. Bradley laughed. Come on. You were never overlooked. You were always the smart one. Smart isn't enough, Bradley. Smart without presence is just potential that never gets actualized. So what changed? Marcus thought about it. About the systematic destruction of every habit that had made him forgettable. About learning to speak like he deserved to be heard. About discovering that conflict wasn't something to be avoided, it was something to be won. I stopped trying to be liked and started trying to be respected. Same thing, isn't it? Not even close. Marcus signaled the waiter for the check. Being liked means people enjoy your company when you're there and forget about you when you're not. Being respected means people think about your opinions when you're not in the room. He stood up, left cash on the table. Being respected means you become inevitable. Outside the restaurant, Marcus checked his phone. 3 missed calls from Catherine Davidson. 2 text messages from Dr. Vasquez. An email marked urgent from his newest client. 6 months ago, no one had called him urgently about anything. His phone had been silent for days at a time. Now it never stopped ringing. Because he'd learned the fundamental truth about power in professional relationships, people don't ignore dangerous men. And danger isn't about being aggressive or difficult. Danger is about being competent, confident, and impossible to overlook. Danger is about knowing your own value and refusing to accept anything less than what you're worth. Danger is about destroying the weak self so completely that it can never resurrect itself. The man who destroys his weak self can never be destroyed by others. Not because he becomes invulnerable. Because he becomes inevitable. Marcus walked to his car, not the apologetic sedan he'd driven for 5 years, but something that announced his arrival before he did. Behind the wheel, he caught his reflection in the rearview mirror. The face looking back at him belonged to someone who'd never been overlooked. Someone who'd never been ignored. Someone who'd been dangerous all along. He'd just forgotten how to act like it. But memory, once recovered, doesn't fade again. The weak self was dead. What lived now was unignorable. And being unignorable, Marcus had discovered, was the only way to live.